So people say, Rio, there's no way you built your physique with just twice a week training. You're definitely just maintaining your physique now that you built it with training 4 to 6 days a week, high volume training. And the truth is that I actually never fucking built the physique I wanted while I was following the bullshit roided fitness influencers and the bodybuilders and all this crap telling you to live in the gym, 10 to 20 sets per muscle group, 4 to 6 workouts a week. That's complete and utter fucking bullshit. And if your physique is stagnant, if you don't have the physique you want, it's because you're following that bullshit information. This is a result of going against the status quo, actually finding what works for people who are not taking drugs, for people whose lives don't revolve around the gym. No safety racks needed. Whew. God damn. Dude, I thought I had that.
What are your thoughts on ego lifting?
Right as I fail a fucking bench press. So ego lifting is something that plagues a lot of people in the gym. You guys might have noticed if you've watched my videos for any length of time that the weights I'm working with now are actually less than what I've worked with in the past, and that's because I realized that my ego was getting in the way a lot of times and I was using more weight than I should have. Obviously I could lift the weight, but like you have to pose the question of like, are you in the gym to move weight or are you in the gym to build muscle? And I realized like I'm in the gym to build muscle, and that comes down to doing, using proper technique and actually stimulating the target muscles instead of just striving to move the weight. And I've also come to the realization that, the whole philosophy I kind of preached in the past of like just focusing on strength gains at like the mercy of everything else doesn't really help with that, because you get caught up in this mindset of just slapping weight to the bar over and over again, like just continuously, and it doesn't really help with the muscle gain process. And it also really damages you in the long term, because what happens is that the quicker you add weight to the bar, the sooner you stall. So you can't actually maintain continual progress over time. So for overall, progressive overload over time and building muscle, it's better to just take your time when it comes to progression, put your ego to the side and make sure you're doing proper technique and going into the gym to build muscle rather than move weight.
So do you think everybody should do the bench press, or do you think there's other exercises that might work better for some people?
So what's more important than sticking with an exact specific set of exercises is picking exercises that work really well for you. So for example, if you're a really tall guy, you may prefer to do a dip rather than a bench press. I think there's a lot of value in sticking with the conventional versions of the compound exercises until you master them before you move on to different variations, because they are really the fundamental exercises for each of the key movement patterns So I recommend spending a good chunk of time getting really good at the flat bench press, the conventional deadlift, the barbell back squat. These basic exercises, despite common belief, are incredible for building muscle and strength. However, if you find yourself in a position where you can't train these exercises productively because maybe your body structure is not suited to them, then you want to switch to exercises that work really well for you. So as long as they're big basic compound movements and you can train them really hard and you have some enjoyment for them, then it's completely fine. Pick exercises that work really well for your individual body. But most people, they start working on a flat bench press or a conventional deadlift or a barbell back squat, and they immediately say, oh, I'm not suited to this exercise, when in reality, they just haven't learned proper technique. So I recommend spending some time mastering the exercises, perfecting the technique before you start picking all these different variations. Okay, he'll join like really quick, so.
How are you, first of all?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good. Well, let's get into it then. Let's get into those questions.
Yes, yeah, perfect. Okay, so for the program at the moment, I'm going with everything as according. However, sometimes, because I'm staying in hotels, so some gyms, they can accommodate, like, some will have a barbell and some won't. So in the gyms without a barbell, I mean, the upper body stuff I can still kind of hit, but some gyms don't even have a leg press, so they'll have like a hamstring curl and a leg extension. For example, if I had to replace leg press or squats, would I do 3 sets of leg extension to failure on around the 10 to 12 rep range?
Yeah, for the time being, while you don't have access to your normal equipment, that's fine. You don't want to see what you're doing right now as like the optimal way to get the best result, right? This is just something that you're doing for the time being while you don't have access to your normal equipment.
I make sure to either, like, let's say, email you or call you before I decide to add anything or I have any questions, because it's like you said, stick to the program, see results. Like, you're the living embodiment of that, 7 years in training. And you said, like, the people who do not stick to your program, they're like, oh, Rio, why am I not losing weight? Oh, why am I not building this and that, for example? I don't know if you still have to deal with that a lot, or... Yeah.
No, it's true, man. It's because they don't follow the program.
Like, the results speak for itself, basically.
Yeah. The principles always stay the same. It's just like the little tactics can change. You know what I mean? But the principles always remain. That's what I try and teach from a place of, is just focusing on the principles, and then, that's the most important thing. That's how you actually help people. You don't teach them the little tactics. You teach them like the principles so that they can actually then go off on their own and get the result that they want. Does that make sense?
Definitely, because again, that's what you do and you encourage. See, like, as I'm speaking to you now, with what you've just said, and you can even, if you want, you can use this call for content. What you've just said, again, really stands you apart, because you're going to guide me, and then eventually, okay, Devesh, you've got enough tools, go off, do your own thing. Other creators, this guy is learning from me. He's my source of income. Let me just keep feeding him little by little each time so he keeps coming back, for example.
No, exactly, man, exactly. There's a lot of con men like that, but they lose in the long term. Maybe they win in the short term, but they lose in the long term because you don't build anything long lasting and sustainable by fucking people over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, over time you will win by serving people, right? Truly serving them, not just for the time being, but serving them for life. Like, that's my goal with coaching. Like, coaching for me is like not something that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna coach this person, I'm gonna try and coach them for the next like few years. And I'm like, if that's what that person wants, by all means I'll do it. But I approach coaching from the standpoint of, okay, I'm gonna give you exactly, like, I'm gonna teach you how to fish, right? I'm gonna get you the fucking result. But I'm also going to make sure that when we no longer work together, you are able to build upon and sustain the results that you created.
what are your thoughts on training all the way to mechanical failure?
So it's incredibly important that you take every set to the point where you have 0 reps left in the tank. You want to squeeze out every possible rep that you can in good form. However, you don't want to actually fail your sets, because what that does is it leaves very little room for you to actually progress forward, right? So you need to strike that perfect balance between pushing your sets really, really hard into that bleeding edge and leaving a tiny bit in the tank to the point where you're not failing the set and pushing yourself beyond your recovery ability. So people may throw in the references of like Mike Mentzer or Dorian Yates. They took their sets to failure and beyond, right? Not just momentary failure, but actually true failure. They did negatives, force reps, drop sets, all this different shit. We have to understand is that while the general principles of what they taught were correct, they're still taking mega fuckloads of drugs, right? And pushing your sets like that as someone who's not taking drugs is going to push you beyond your recovery ability, and it's going to make it very hard for you to recover and grow from. So you have to leave a tiny bit of room in the tank for you to then progress forward in your next workout. And the issue with pushing your sets to actual failure, like you just saw me do on the bench press, is you quickly hit a wall of stagnation, right? So the goal of training isn't just to push balls to the wall in every single workout. It's to achieve progressive overload where you're gaining strength over time, right? That's the ultimate goal that you're shooting for. And pushing your sets too hard and not leaving any room, not leaving anything in the tank for forward progress is gonna make you hit this wall really quickly. So you're gonna push your sets really, really hard, you're gonna fail a ton, and you're gonna find yourself in a position where you're completely stagnant.
So how come you give away so much free content?
So there are a few reasons why I give away a lot of free content. The first being that content creation, putting out content on YouTube, is my primary customer acquisition method. That's the primary channel through which I get customers and leads for my business. And that's, a lot of people put out this idea that, I put out content because I just want to help people. I just want to be selfless. I just want to create an impact. And most people are just full of shit and not really transparent with their intent. I obviously love the idea of helping people and providing value and helping people get results, and with the same philosophy and the same methods and advice that I applied to get the results that I have in my fitness. But at the end of the day, there is an element of reciprocity created through content creation, putting out value into the world, into the universe, because obviously I can take a percentage of that value that I create in the marketplace, right, and in the world. So there is sort of a balancing act where, like YouTube, I do it obviously to get customers and leads for my business, but I also do it because I love sort of the idea of spreading the message wider than just to my customers and my clients. I love how with YouTube, with free content, you can get the message out to more people than just your clients, your customers, because there are some people who are not going to be fortunate enough to pay for your products, your services, and I still want those people to be able to reap the rewards and the results of this fitness philosophy that I teach. So I have two favorite progression methods. So the first progression method that I really love is the classical double progression method. And then the second one is micro loading. So I'm very old school when it comes to my progression methods. I don't believe in any of this periodization or any of this complicated bullshit. I prefer to just use a simple progression method where, you know, you're working in a rep range, let's say 6 to 8, you're using a given weight and you progress in reps until you hit the top end of the rep range. You add 5 pounds, drop to the bottom of the rep range, which would be 6, and then you work your way back up. And it's this continuous process of adding reps and then adding a little bit of weight. And that's very, very effective. Once you get a little bit more advanced, you know, intermediate advanced, micro loading is really, really effective, especially on upper body pressing movements. So what I really love about micro plates is, well, first of all, they're essentially these fractional plates that come in like 0.25 up to like 1.5 pound plates. And it allows you to basically progress more in line with your body's natural rate of adaptation. So at a certain point, adding 5 pounds to the bar becomes really, really difficult, especially on movements like, you know, the bench press or the overhead press. In that case, it really helps to be able to go up in like, you know, 1 pound increments, which is more in line with how fast your body can grow and adapt to the stimulus in the gym.
What are your thoughts on performing full range of motion as opposed to something like lengthened partials, for example?
I think people have vastly overcomplicated execution of exercises. Like, you know, you're getting a little bit too deep into the dark side, the nerdy side of fitness when you're starting to talk about fucking lengthened partials and shit like that. It's like, you don't need that. You don't fucking need that. For 99.9% of the training population, people have basically got their heads stuck up their own assholes. Literally. Like, why are you focused on that? Why are you focused on, just do the fucking exercise. Like, people have, for the physique you want, I fucking promise you, I put my life on this. You do not need any of this complicated bullshit. Lengthened partials, like this, like, don't be a dork, okay? Like, you're not gonna get any benefit out of fitness focusing on these little minute details. This is one of those great examples of like people focusing on the 5% rather than the fucking 95% of what's gonna get you results. That's part of the 5%. The 5% is what the fitness industry focuses on. The biggest topics in the YouTube fitness space are all things that maybe account for 5% of the fucking development you're gonna get in your physique. What does the 95% come down to? Having a big group of compound exercises, training them hard, striving to get stronger at them over time. Sleeping 8 hours per night, hitting your calories and protein, getting some good whole foods in your diet. Anything you're focusing on beyond that is a complete and utter waste of time. You need to find something else to do with your fucking spare time.
So you do concede that cardio is good for your health, good for your well-being, those kind of things. And you still don't do it yourself. How come?
I don't think that cardio is something that has no benefits whatsoever. I think there are definitely, you know, cardiovascular benefits to doing a more intense form of cardio. However, I know personally that I will never stay consistent with going on runs or doing some sort of higher intensity cardio. So I don't do it, man. And like, this is something that you have to be honest with yourself about. It's like, there's so many different things that we can do in our lives, things that are good for us, things that other people preach are like the, you know, the optimal way to do things. But at the end of the day, you can't do everything. You can't do everything, right? You have to be very selective with like what things are you going to prioritize that are going to give you the most results. Like, you want to kind of look at that 80-20 principle, be like, what's the minority of actions that are really going to create the majority of the result? And when it comes to fitness, in terms of the activities, it's really walking and strength training. That's what's really going to get you the physique that you want. And when it comes to intense forms of cardio, running, high intensity interval training, it's like, sure, you can argue the benefits. I just know I'm never going to be able to do it. And I very strongly believe in the quote, you know, if you can't do it for a decade, then don't do it for a day. Or even better, like, if you can't do it for life, then don't do it for a day. And that's how you want to see everything that you do, because you're only going to get the result from the long-term long-term compounding effect of doing that, right? And if you're not gonna be able to stick to something for a long period of time, you're not gonna be able to stick to it for life, there's no point in doing it to begin with, because again, the results only really come from the long-term compounding effect of doing it consistently.
How do you pick which isolation exercises you want to do in each workout?
So the isolation exercises are always just meant to plug the gaps left by the core compound exercises, and that's going to be different for each individual. There are some common muscle groups that you're going to want to work a little bit more often. For example, that you're not hit with isolation exercises to get that little bit extra work. One of them could be like the side delts. Like I always throw in some lateral raises. I always throw in some extra bicep work, because who doesn't want bigger arms, bigger biceps? There's certain exercises that people do in terms of isolation exercises that are just not necessary. Like if you're focused on doing heavy benching, you probably don't need to do some fucking chest flies, right? If you're like there are certain muscle groups that just like get hit very well with the compound movements that a lot of people just throw extra work at when it's not necessary. You have to really, pick every exercise with intention. So many people just throw in so much shit into their routines, and their focus and effort is completely diluted. So you want to be very intentional with the isolation exercises you pick. So another thing to keep in mind is that if you're not very strong at a handful of compound exercises, there's a good chance everything's a fucking weak point, and you don't need to throw isolation exercises at every little muscle group. You're only really going to know what your weak points are once you've actually built a solid base and you built a solid mass foundation, which is going to come from focusing heavily on the big compound movements. So you just want to see it as pick a few isolation exercises to plug the gaps. If your biceps are lagging behind, throw in some extra work for the biceps. If your rear delts are lagging behind, throw some extra work for the rear delts, but don't overdo it. Be very intentional with every exercise you put in your routine.
So what do you think is something that a viewer can implement right now to their workout routine that would make a massive difference?
So the one thing that you could implement right now that would create massive results for you in your physique progress is to cut your volume in half, double your rest days between workouts, get serious about delivering real effort in that reduced amount of training.